The courtroom fell quiet as the doors creaked open. Heads turned. Whispers began. And then, silenced, an older man stepped inside, his back straight, though life had clearly bent him. His uniform was worn, the buttons dulled by time, the fabric stained by memories no one in that room could see. Dirt clung to the hem of his faded trousers. His boots, once polished to perfection, now cracked and tired. He didn't walk with shame. He walked with quiet purpose. The bailiff looked confused. The clerk narrowed her eyes. A woman in the second row scoffed under her breath. Couldn't even dress for court. Her words hung heavy, unchallenged, and one rose. No one offered him a seat. Not even the judge looked up, but Thomas Gray had not come for respect. He had come for justice. They didn't know the story behind that dirty uniform. They didn't know that 32 years ago, in the blistering sands of Kandahar, it was this very man who shielded for younger soldiers with nothing but his body and a broken rifle. They didn't know that he dragged a wounded medic through enemy fire, using his own back as cover. Or that two of those soldiers were buried now, flags folded and stored in clean display, cases their children still stare at every night. They didn't know he lost everything when he came home. His hearing, his marriage, his job, and still, he never raised his voice. He just kept showing up at shelters, at hospitals, at memorials no one else visited. Now, in this quiet courtroom, he stood alone. His neighbor had dragged him into a legal dispute over a boundary fence. A bitter argument, a misunderstanding, but it escalated. Threats were made. And now, a restraining order hearing. He'd been asked to show up in appropriate attire, but he had nothing left except the uniform that had saved lives. So, that's what he wore. The judge finally looked up, frowning. He tapped the bench with his pen. "Mr. Gray," he said sternly, "is this how you show respect for the court?" The room waited. Eyes narrowed. Someone stifled a chuckle. Thomas didn't answer. He simply reached into his breast pocket and pulled out a folded letter. He handed it to the clerk with shaking hands. The paper was yellowed, the ink fading, but the signature at the bottom was unmistakable. The IT was a Medal of Honor citation. Signed by a former president. The judge read it in silence. The room shifted. Feet shuffled. A throat cleared. Slowly, the judge stood. "This man," he began, voice steady, "walks in wearing the only uniform that ever mattered. Not for show, but for sacrifice." Silence deepened. The kind of silence that wraps around guilt and squeezes. The woman who had mocked him now looked at the floor. The neighbor who had brought him to court blinked rapidly, regret setting in like a slow fog. "I will not entertain this case further," the judge declared. Dismissed. Thomas didn't smile. He simply turned and walked out the way he came. In, boots tapping against the tile, dust trailing behind him like a shadow that had earned its right to stay. As he reached the doors, the entire courtroom, row by row, rose to their feet. No applause. No grand gestures. Just silence. Heavy, humble, holy. Some wore silence like armor. Some wore their past like a burden. He wore both and still walked forward. True honor doesn't need clean clothes. It needs a clean heart. The strongest salute is the one that rises in silence. Outside, the sunlight hit his face, and for a brief second, Thomas looked up. Not for validation, not for thanks, but for the ones who never made it home. For the ones whose uniforms never got dirty again. Not all battles leave visible scars. And not all heroes were what we expect. Sometimes, the dirtiest uniform in the room belongs to the cleanest soul. If you were moved by this story, let us know where you're watching from and what it made you feel. Subscribe for more true stories that remind us quiet strength changes everything.